The Dow flirted with 20,000 again Tuesday. Investors clearly buoyed since Donald Trump's election. The value of the dollar hit a 14-year high on Tuesday as well. That comes as the latest Gallup poll shows U.S. economic confidence has also reached a new high. You can see here how it shot up after Trump's election.
I think that what we're going to see is both Donald Trump and the country now turning to what his presidency is going to look like. He is almost done putting together his cabinet, so we have a good sense of who will be surrounding him if those folks are able to be confirmed by the Senate.
And Trump's choices show his plans to surround himself with successful leaders who share real-world economic experience, including his latest pick for Secretary of the Army. Military veteran Vincent Viola once chaired the New York Mercantile Exchange and owns the NHL's Florida Panthers. Others include fast food executive Andy Puzder to lead the Labor Department, billionaire investor Wilbur Ross for Commerce Secretary, financier Steven Mnuchin for Treasury, and Goldman Sachs President Gary Cohn as his top economic advisor.
We are going to stand up for the American worker like nobody has ever stood up for that worker before. Our economic agenda can be summed up in three very beautiful words: jobs, jobs, jobs.
And Trump tweeting his economic strategy saying, "My administration will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American." Meanwhile, there are rumors Trump could nominate conservative icon and CNBC contributor Larry Kudlow for the Council of Economic Advisors. Kudlow served on President Reagan's Office of Management and Budget. Trump's pick for budget director, Republican Congressman Mick Mulvaney, is also getting conservative kudos because he's a fierce deficit hawk, known for pushing spending cuts to balance the budget. One issue that could present a challenge to Trump's economic goals: President Obama has just delivered a parting shot at the energy industry, banning future oil drilling in much of the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. And it's unclear if Trump will be able to overturn the move. Mark Martin, CBN News.
With us now is Stephen Moore. He's an economist with FreedomWorks, and he is an advisor to the Trump campaign. Steve, good to see you back again. Thanks for being with us.
Pat, Merry Christmas.
All right, what's going to happen day one? What's he going to do? There's one thought that he could just, by the stroke of the pen, do away with all these executive orders that are clogging up the industry. Can he do anything as bold as that, or is he going to be more measured?
Well, I hope it's the former, not the latter. I think he's got to be bold. He's got to just race out of the gates like Secretariat with this whole economic reform agenda that's based on jobs. Pat, you could literally put 50 executive orders on Donald Trump's desk the day he arrives into the White House, the Oval Office, for the first time. And most of these executive orders would be repealing the executive orders that Barack Obama has passed. And you just mentioned this new executive order where President Obama is taking millions and millions of acres of drilling lands and offshore offline. No, we can repeal that and make sure we are producing American energy. And then, of course, the big fight will be the tax cut, which is what I worked on with Donald Trump during the campaign. If we can get that passed, I think it's going to be like rocket fuel for the economy. It's going to bring jobs back to these areas that have been, there's so many areas of the country, Pat, that have not felt any recovery since 2009. A lot of these places in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that just never saw a recovery. And those are the areas that went for Donald Trump. And he has to now stand up and deliver for those families and workers.
Well, let's take the tax cut. We're talking about taking the corporate tax down to 15%. Is the Congress going to go along with that, do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a jobs program. Pat, we have the dumbest tax system in the whole world. You couldn't come up with anything dumber that we have right now. We're taxing what we export and produce in America, but we don't tax what we import, so that costs American jobs. And then we also have the highest tax rate in the world. So what's happening is a lot of our companies are leaving and they're going to places like Mexico and they're going to places like India and China. We want to bring those jobs back, Pat. We want to be a magnet for factories and jobs and capital to come into the United States. And you bring our rate down from the highest in the world to one of the lowest. By the way, Ireland will still have a lower tax rate than we will. We'll be close to the lowest. And I think you're going to bring a lot of those jobs back.
Well, I don't think we have to get the better of Ireland, but well, listen. Steve Mnuchin has indicated that there might be, in terms of personal tax cuts, that by the time they get through taking out the exemptions, it'll kind of balance out. Now, is it going to work out that way, or will there actually be tax cuts for individual investors and individual taxpayers?
So first of all, I mean, the reason the business tax cut is so important, this is what's really important for workers, because I've always believed, Pat, you can't have healthy jobs that pay a lot of money if you don't have healthy businesses. And one of the emphasis that Donald Trump has made all along is we want our businesses to be strong and profitable so they can hire more workers. Liberals don't get the connection. They somehow think if you're helping businesses, you're helping rich people. No, you're helping the people who work for those companies. You know that as an employer yourself, Pat.
Sure.
I would make the case that small businesses need a tax cut, too. Did you know, Pat, there are 26.5 million small businesses in this country? 26.5 million. Those people, those men and women who run those businesses, they're the backbone of the American economy. We're going to make sure that they're facing lower taxes and less regulation. And by the way, I want to stress this point, Pat. When I've talked to small businessmen and women, some of the heads of these Fortune 100 companies, they say the regulatory stranglehold of government is what's killing them. They can't hire more workers because of Obamacare and all of these other rules and regulations. If you ease that burden, you're going to bring a lot of jobs back. I guarantee you.
What's the mechanism of easing that? It's just crazy, some of these things. I read a column the other day in the Journal that was so well written about these idea people, these wordsmiths that put together all these rules, but they've never been on the factory floor in their lives.
Exactly.
What mechanism do you do to to undo all these regulations? What do you have to do?
Yeah, two things, Pat.
All right.
Number one, as I just said earlier, a lot of the regulations that Obama has put into place were never signed into law. I mean, never passed through Congress. We've had an imperial president who just feels like his regulators can do whatever they want. Trump has to come in and reverse those. Number two, people are policy. And what Donald Trump has to do, and he's starting to do this so effectively, put good people in these regulatory agencies. This gentleman, Pruitt, who was the Attorney General of Oklahoma, he's now going to be running the EPA. Now, what they proved in states like Texas and Oklahoma is you can have a prosperous economy with factories and oil and gas production, and you can make the environment safer and cleaner as well. Those are not incompatible, Pat. A strong economy with strong environmental protections, but ones that make sense. And I'll mention another one, Pat. It's one that sticks in my craw. Do you know that under the Obamacare law, if you hire less than 50 workers, you don't have to comply with the regulations. If you hire more than 50 workers, you have an avalanche of rules and regulations and mandates and taxes. So you know what businesses are doing, Pat? I mean, this is so obvious. They're not hiring any more than 50 workers. Once they get to 49, they won't hire more workers. Well, that's crazy. Let's get rid of that law so businesses can hire more people and we can have more jobs in this country. I mean, this is not complicated.
Let me give you a horrible example that took place about a mile from where I'm sitting. There's a beautiful HUD project with apartments. It was magnificent. It filled up almost immediately. HUD was happy. The owners were happy. Everybody was happy on a piece of land. The adjoining land, because of a change in EPA regulations, was declared a wetland. This is right along the side of an interstate, for heaven's sakes, and they said it's a wetland. I mean, are you going to have migratory game? Are you going to have fish in that thing? Of course not. Will they have a few little sprigs of some kind of plant that grows in wet conditions, but it's pretty much dry. It's exactly the same as the project, but the project's been put on hold because of EPA regulations. What do you have to do to get the head of the EPA? Is that a Senate confirmation, or can
it is, and that's going to be a battle. We need all of your viewers and listeners to get into this fight, because the Sierra Club and these radical environmental groups are going to put up a big fight against Mr. Pruitt. I'm a big fan of his. I think he gets it. And by the way, I want to mention another one, because, you are in Virginia, obviously. I live in Virginia, Pat. And what has happened to the coal mining towns of states like Virginia, Wyoming, Pennsylvania has been heartbreaking. These towns have been decimated by regulation. And I believe, and I've told Donald Trump that, if we can get rid of some of these incredibly stringent regulations, we can put those coal miners back in the jobs where they belong. And incidentally, every time we close a coal plant here in the United States, China and India built 10 of them. So all we're doing is sending our jobs to China and India. It doesn't make any sense. It's not good for the environment or the economy.
Last question. Is he going to put Larry Kudlow in as Council of Economic Advisor? What do you think?
We got to work on this. I know you know Larry, and
sure.
He's like a brother to me, and he is the smartest economist maybe in the country. There's nobody who can deliver the message of prosperity. As Larry used to always say on his TV show, the best path to prosperity is free market economics. And just like Milton Friedman, I mean, he's the new Milton Friedman. So I got my fingers crossed on that, Pat. He would be fantastic.
Well, good for you. Well, thanks, Stephen, for what you're doing. We watched with eagerness, and we're counting the days when all this takes place. But we're all very
Pat,
interested.
Look what's happened to the stock market. We've gone up 2,000 points since Donald Trump was elected. He hasn't even been in office yet. We've had the biggest bull market ever. So this is going to be a great year ahead.
Let's hope so. All right. Okay. I'm betting on it. I'm all in on this market, okay?
You're going to make money, my friend.